I didn't know you were going to read the whole bio, Carl. Thank you.
I did cut it down.
I appreciate it. As you can tell, I have multifaceted interests, but I am from Albuquerque, and really, my twin hometowns, Oakland, Albuquerque. I love those places, but there's nowhere else that I'd rather be than living right here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we have so many great partners that share this ecosystem with us, right? All of us in this room are really part of this ecosystem of visiting New Mexico, attracting tourism. And so to that end, we've really strengthened our partnership with Visit Albuquerque over the last few years. And I so appreciate that partnership. Tanya and Sealer are here and many of the other team members. It's a really wonderful effort. And I think that it can yield great results as we continue to celebrate what's good about Albuquerque, what's good about New Mexico, the hard work that we're doing here. And so you will see in mid-April a special section of the Albuquerque Journal that highlights the aviation department, the Sunport, to some degree Double Eagle 2, and all our various efforts that we're going to really plus up the experience for customers, play a productive role in economic development in the city and the broader region. And so that is my responsibility, but I'm supported by a really wonderful team, and want to acknowledge my fantastic colleague Leah Black here, who joined me as +1, my wing lady. We just really enjoyed working together. I'm going to have a few flying puns for you today. And so to share another one, I really feel like I'm kind of going to be flying by the seat of my pants on this one, because I am stepping in for Max Gruner as a pinch hitter. I can't exactly deliver everything that he does, but I've peppered in some aviation content here, and I think the Q&A can be really interesting if we focus a little more probably on some of what aviation is doing in terms of commercial development, hospitality, marketing, those kinds of things. But that said, this is a great example of the One Albuquerque spirit. I work really closely with the Economic Development Department. I think that's why Max invited me to fill in for him. They're wonderful colleagues. They're really passionate about Albuquerque and about growing industry and business here. I see that commitment every day, and these are folks who, we email each other all hours of the evening and on the weekends, because we're always on, and we're always pushing for development and doing everything we can to really enable investment here. We've got a long way to go, and we can certainly talk about what some of those efforts look like now, and how we can better shape our future by addressing some of the issues around process, housing. I'm actually part of a housing task force. It's kind of unusual for an aviation department leader to be part of this effort, but I joined my EDD colleagues at a Bloomberg Harvard City Leaders Initiative at the Harvard Kennedy School earlier this year, and we're really tackling some of the primary constraints to economic development in our city. And so it's really an honor to be part of that effort. So I'll kind of fly through some of these slides on economic development, and we'll linger a little more on some of the aviation points. But obviously regional conveners supporting business and workforce development, and my department certainly has a role to play as far as that goes. A lot of different programs that the department is responsible for. Of course, I want to call out that the Minority Business Development Agency is under fire right now. Its fate is somewhat uncertain, but we think this is a really important initiative. And to give you an example of a role that they play that's related to my work and our team's work at aviation, we have a new program called Ascend ABQ at the airport. We'll be launching the effort this summer. Ascend ABQ is a program that works with micro businesses to have them come into the airport and market their products inside the terminal building, and we actually provide the kiosks and professional development support for all those people who are operating those kiosks in the Sunport, and also for those who applied but didn't make the first cut. They get ongoing support and training that the aviation department for the city pays for. And that's one way we can really invest in some of the smaller businesses. It's not necessarily an incubator, it's more of an accelerator, right? If you already have a product and you're already marketing, maybe you're at the rail yards market, or maybe you travel up to Santa Fe to market, or any of the other smaller markets around the region. This gives these micro businesses a higher degree of visibility, right? So they can sell their products and make money, but they can also just raise awareness about their product and where you might be able to find it in town. And the reason why I raise that now on this slide is because MBDA staff partnered with Aviation Department, and we had a lot of other partners that were involved as well, but they partnered with us to ensure that we got the word out and we really spread it broadly, and market the opportunity, and also just engage and make sure that these micro business owners came to our information sessions and really understood, like, you have a shot at this, right? So that's very important, and I just want to give that shout out to my colleagues at MBDA, because I know they're stressed out these days, but we really value them. So priority sectors, and certainly Aviation Department is involved in development in some of these areas. Aerospace and aviation, huge opportunity for economic development in our region. Sustainable green energy. I'll give you a couple of examples of projects in that area later. Film and digital media. Also, the Aviation Department has a couple projects in that realm. Tourism and outdoor recreation. And so Tanya mentioned earlier some of the flights that are coming online this year. We're also exploring international service, especially to destinations in Mexico. And we have really active conversations with Mexican government officials to explore what those opportunities look like. Now, we've had some abortive attempts in the past, and so our strategy now is to make sure that they're sustainable in the long term, that we don't add a route and then it goes away in a year or 2 years, or in the case of the ill-fated Volatus attempt, one day. So, really it's looking at the market conditions and determining what we can do to start establishing nonstop routes from ABQ to Mexico. And bioscience, future tech, international trade, advanced manufacturing, all these are critical areas of economic development that the city broadly is focused on, and that the Aviation Department is a partner with EDD on to develop out. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we do that in a bit. So aerospace and aviation, a few bullet points there. I won't read through them. Let me just kind of emphasize a couple of themes here. So some of you may know we have a business park. It's about an 82-acre site called the Aviation Center of Excellence. If you've seen some of the local news coverage in previous years, or some of the criticism that we've received around it, we had 2 projects fail miserably on that site. Really unfortunate. Thea Group was a company that was going to do some satellite manufacturing via a project called the Orion Initiative. And then we had Universal Hydrogen folded about a year ago. And we're really hopeful about that one, because that would have brought a supply chain enhancement to really the decarbonization of aviation through their hydrogen systems. So these were heartbreaks, really, for us, that they didn't work out. But we're not going to just kind of sit and mope about it. We're doing something. So the city, well, actually my department in cooperation with some partners, are going to be putting out a request for information later on this month for master developers to look at that ACE property, as well as some other parcels we have on the west side, and also some inside the fence aviation related uses. And we're just going to kind of soft sound the development community, both here regionally and nationally, to see how they respond to the availability of these parcels of property and what kinds of projects that they might want to champion. And that means economic development, it means job creation. But those, I think, especially for the properties around the Sunport, it's important to remember that there are some built-in advantages. Shortest supply chain possible for advanced manufacturing, because advanced manufacturing relies in part on high-value inputs that utilize belly freight and air cargo. And so if you're co-located with the airport at the ACE or another property, you've got the best possible access to that air cargo service that you can possibly have. Another reason, we purchased a rail spur that runs off of the main north-south rail line down south towards Rio Bravo, and then from Rio Bravo it cuts around to the east just south of our airfield. And so we're looking at doing a multimodal development to really integrate highway, rail, and air cargo systems so that we can create a distribution hub for the advancement of economic growth. And we really envision this project to be a smart city initiative, meaning that we'll use advanced technology for the purposes of security, planning, and development of this site. And so that's going to be a really, I think, interesting and great opportunity for us to capitalize on the economic growth that we see here happening at Mesa del Sol, some on the west side, the fact that Intel's transitioning to a really high degree of manufacturing of their chipsets. Right? We see these things unfolding, and there's an opportunity for the airport to really play a role in growing that logistics capacity. Tourism and outdoor recreation, we partner with Visit Albuquerque. We partner with State Tourism Department and then New Mexico True. If you've been in the airport lately, you might see some Visit Albuquerque ads that have been put up on some of our temporary walls as we're under construction. We've got a new effort that we're engaging in now to spread the love even more and showcase all the wonderful places that you can visit in New Mexico in the real estate around our airport. So really excited about that. We know a lot of the out-of-market campaigns in several other cities around the country have been successful in attracting tourists, and we want to have some more of that happening in our airport so people can say, oh, okay, next time I come out, I'm going to visit that place. Or as they're landing, you know, something catches their eye and they want to go check it out. Sustainability and green energy. So many folks don't know actually that the Sunport is a leader in this space. We have received our carbon level 1 accreditation from the Airport Councils International. And that means that we have mapped our carbon footprint. And the next step is to reduce that carbon footprint with all our ground service equipment and the emissions that are tied to the operations of the airport. And so that's something we're really dedicated to. Another thing we're dedicated to is deploying solar. And so the Sunport is one of 25 different sites that's working with a company called Sustainability Partners that does infrastructure as a service. And they're going to be developing out these solar sites at these 25 sites around the city, all city facilities. And the biggest one, a 1 megawatt project, is going to be on University and George Road at former landfill. Reason why we love this prospect is it's really hard to develop on landfill. You know, a lot of costly remediation needs to be done, but solar is different, right? You don't have to dig deep and build a foundation and everything like that. So this is a unique opportunity for us to really activate property that's just sitting vacant right now with this big solar project, and that's going to help to power the terminal building itself with carbon-free energy. So we're very excited about that, and we're going to be one of the first sites to get underway in terms of design and construction, and we'll see that start this year. Film and digital media. We also have a role to play in this realm. So we've been working closely with EDD and the film office for some time now, but the most exciting and frankly kind of under fire project right now that we're trying to champion is Mesa Film Studios. Mesa Film Studios would be a 2-phase project out at Double Eagle 2 on property about a mile north of the airfield on the west side. It is adjacent to major public open space as well as the National Petroglyph Monument. And so there's some sensitivity in that neighborhood, and we've been really working through how to deploy this project with the developers, the Mesa Film Studios team, one of whom is actually a homegrown member of our community, and that's Galen Walker. So Galen grew up in Albuquerque and a couple of neighborhoods in the valley and in Barelas. And Galen came back to New Mexico several years ago and decided he wanted to build a film studio in Albuquerque to really build out our capacity to do independent of like a specific studio like Netflix, right? Netflix only does Netflix productions. Mesa Film Studios can do productions from any production house. And so that gives a certain level of independence and flexibility to really expand the kinds of television series and films that are produced in New Mexico. And it can be part of really a network or an ecosystem that can be built out quite broadly to encompass other services besides just film and TV production, right? There's a lot of logistical services. People flying in to do these productions would be customers at your hotels, and they'd go out to eat at restaurants, and they would help us to make more and more investments and really to kind of capitalize on this rare opportunity that we have to double down on our commitment to the film and television industry and say, you know, the city of Albuquerque says, yes, we want this. So just to be clear about where we're at right now, the site plan, EPC, was appealed. The land use hearing officer ruled that, due to a technicality, he didn't like the way that the planning department kind of guided the process, and it's going to City Council on April 7th to be heard for a full hearing. We did get a good vote on Monday night, 8-1. 8 council members decided they didn't like the LUHO's technical finding and that they're going to take it to a full hearing. This project's fate really hangs in the balance, and unfortunately there's a handful of individuals living on the west side who don't want to see that project come to fruition, and they believe we should have done it their way. I'm here to tell you we tried to work really hard with them to make some compromises, but they kept fighting us. We did a lot of tribal engagement on this front. We worked with several colleagues on that, including Terry Sloan, who's our tribal liaison for the city of Albuquerque from the Office of Equity and Inclusion. And so we've done a lot of due diligence, and we plan to do a lot more due diligence on this project. But I think that there are just some folks who live in our city who kind of want to keep the status quo. And in order for our housing to be affordable, in order for our neighborhoods to be safe, we can't maintain the status quo, right? We have to be able to develop. We have to be able to build multifamily units in that city, and we have to be able to do economic development and create high quality jobs in the city. Otherwise, we will just be mired in the status quo, and none of us want that, I don't think. So we're fighting for it, and we really believe in this. Future technology, as I mentioned, advanced manufacturing really benefits from proximity if they're doing development or if they're doing production or R&D near the airport. And so the airport does still play a significant role in the space. We do have Eclipse Aviation actually still producing aircraft in a hangar just off the airfield, and they also do paint and maintenance and marketing, and they're looking to revamp their operations and expand and produce more of their aircraft. So we do have homegrown New Mexican-made airplanes that are produced right next to the airfield and at the Sunport. But we want to do more. And so we are committed to investing a lot in infrastructure, and we've actually put $15 million into enabling infrastructure at the ACE site with this vision in mind. So when we put that RFI out for about 45 days, and we'll have a open period where we'll probably invite some prospective developers out to the Sunport, do a site visit, and maybe have like a webinar. We're still kind of planning on how we do this, but that's a great opportunity to engage, and we'll try to make sure that everybody at least is aware, folks in this room are at least aware of that effort. If you have any friends, colleagues who are in that development world for manufacturing, high tech, any of these areas that we're touching upon, please share with them. And then international trade. Albuquerque sits at a very interesting geographic location because of the intersection of I-40 and I-25. And the rail project that I mentioned also really enhances our ability to play a significant role as a commercial hub. We don't have high levels of consumption because Albuquerque is the biggest city in the state, and it's not huge. So we're not the massive consumers that some of our neighboring states are, and some of those big cities in our neighboring states are. but we can still play a role in commerce and trade. Our proximity to Mexico, our tie-in to the distribution network. So that's something that the rail spur and the multimodal project that I mentioned earlier very much plays to that strength. But the other thing that plays to that strength is the free trade zone. So the airport is the locus of the FTZ. And that means that if you're a manufacturer anywhere in Bernalillo, Sandoval, Valencia counties, you can apply for an FTZ license, and you get some really great advantages in terms of deferring duties, meaning tariffs, and everybody, boy, tariffs is a whole other subject we could talk about, but you know that's regardless of whether we're engaged deeply in kind of a tariff battle with our international neighbors, they're there, right? Even if the new tariffs get removed, tariffs are a reality for manufacturers, and manufacturers in the United States pay a lot for auto parts, vehicles, anything that's manufactured in this country, and so the FTZ is an advantage in that regard. And an intellectual capital, and obviously, you know, we've lived with this reality for quite a long time, and perhaps none more so than the Sunport, because the Kirtland Air Force Base uses our airfield. Okay, so all the aircraft that operate in and out of Kirtland Air Force Base take off and land on our airfield. But also we're adjacent to Sandia National Labs, and probably everyone in this room has a friend or a family member who works for the labs, or maybe Los Alamos. My wife works for Sandia, actually. And so it's great that we have these neighbors here, but one of the things that we're really making an effort toward, and a couple of projects that may come to fruition, one of them namely the New Mexico Innovation Hub that's envisioned to happen on the ACE property that I mentioned earlier, really plays upon this idea that, okay, we've had all this talent kind of behind the wall at the labs, at the Air Force Base for such a long time. It's time for us to do more to commercialize some of that technology and some of that great IP that is created in those places. And so the New Mexico Innovation Hub and some other, there's a bioscience hub as well that's being established. Those are efforts to really do our part as local government to encourage the commercialization of some of this great technology. Incentives as well. So I'll just use a couple of these as examples. So LIDA is a really great opportunity to provide support, monies from the state and the city for job creating projects. And so actually Mesa Film Studios was approved by the City Council for LIDA funding. I believe the vote was unanimous, actually. And they would receive $7 million in all to stand up the studio. And so LIDA funds, the LIDA program in general is the way that the state and the city have fashioned to support these projects and kind of navigate that territory around the state's anti-donation clause. And so there are some obligations that the developer has to follow, and each agreement that governs each project has its own set of obligations, but they have to meet those obligations to get the allocation of monies to support their project. IRBs, industrial revenue bonds, are another way that we can benefit some of these projects, and Mesa Film Studios would also be a recipient of IRBs. And by the way, if you have any questions about any of the Economic Development Department initiatives, I will probably refer you, I might be able to answer, but I'll probably refer you to Monica Mitchell, my colleague at EDD, to answer some of those questions, because she'll have better details than I do. So Downtown Forward. Can I just see a show of hands? Kind of curious, how many of y'all are aware of some of the details of the Downtown Forward initiative? So let me see a show of hands. So not everybody, right? And so this is important. I think I would encourage you to bring somebody back to speak to this group just on Downtown Forward specifically. It's not an initiative that I'm involved in directly, but obviously as a resident, as a leader at the aviation department, I'm cheering on my colleagues. This is a great initiative. And the housing element of this, I just want to highlight something that's really interesting about it. So Albuquerque, when you look at a densification map, it has kind of the weirdest pattern. It's not like a traditional city where in the downtown area you have a big spike of densification. We've got higher rates of densification in the International District and then kind of on the near west side. And in the center, it's not very dense. And actually, densification is one of those things that really supports business growth, supports hospitality services, supports a centralized transportation network for residents of the city and visitors. And in order to create more densification, you have to be able to build housing upward, right? And some of our city ordinances really work against that process. And I know, right, a lot of residents in this city want to protect their view sheds. However, if we're to build more housing, and not only build more, but make it attainable, right, so that people can afford it. I think we're all kind of a little bit of sticker shock if you've looked at housing prices lately, how expensive they've gotten in this market in the pre-COVID years to now. Huge increases in prices, and the housing stock has not kept pace at all. So this is a really, really major problem. And if we're to grow our city and make it a more equitable place to live, we really need to address this problem. That's going to help us, all of us. So a few points on the case for downtown. This is probably the subject matter that I'm kind of least familiar with, so I'll let you take a look at the slide. But I probably don't need to argue to this group how important it is for us to invest in and revitalize our downtown. I'm seeing some really encouraging signs, though, by the way. The newish ex novo, that's awesome. And if we see more of that kind of development, I think we're going to be on the right track. A little more on downtown. Just pausing for a second for you to read. So, walk to stuff or take the bus. To us, that's really key, right? We're not a very walkable city. And we want to make it walkable. And some of you might be thinking, why does an aviation airport guy even think so much about these things? But if you think about it, the connection between having a walkable, safe city and airport operations is really strong. Because the more we can make it a walkable, safe city, the more we can develop our interiors, the more visitors we can attract, and the more that we can make the lives of our residents prosperous, and prosperous folks travel, right? And so that's why we're doing so much in terms of driving air service development too. So there's really like a direct line between all those things, and these are connections that we often don't make. Did you want to point out a couple things?
Just Arrive Hotel, who's here, and so these are properties that the city's working on to further develop and improve or enhance our destination. Yeah. And we're with you on this destination improvement fund.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for saying so. No, it's an incredibly important effort. And you know, just personally in my own experience, I find Albuquerque to be a fascinating place for the type of lodging that we offer, right? Like whatever your ability to book a room, whatever you can afford, like you're going to find something that fits your need and your interest. And frankly, I think it's really cool. I've been part of a couple ribbon cuttings of some new openings of hotels in the vicinity of the airport. We've actually seen some really good hotel development in the airport submarket. And I looked at some data somewhat recently and maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was surprised to see that our occupancy rates are like the highest in the city in our submarket. But I also know that development costs are incredibly high, right? So I don't know if you have the president's ear, but remind him that actually Americans pay tariffs, and the more tariffs you put on imports, the more expensive you make everything, especially steel and aluminum and other raw materials that we need to build hotels and we need to build residences. So I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or something else, but I will debate anybody to the hilt that tariffs are terrible for our economy, and we really need to start looking past that kind of cudgel approach to policy. So putting my DC hat on there for a minute. Go ahead, Tanya.
Manny, I just wanted to point out for the room, because I think without a header this is a little bit confusing, but that is actually the grants that were done for the Route 66 sign renovation. So if anybody's looking at that, that is very specific to the Route 60, to the downtowner sign that's in front of the Arrive Hotel and things like that. So I just wanted to clarify a little bit where that money was spent, was on the neon sign for the Route 66 signage restoration.
I appreciate that, Tanya. Thank you. Yeah. Hey, and this can be a team effort because I'm not the SME on a lot of this stuff. So anybody who wants to jump in, please do. I love it. I love it. The rail trail, you know, I've been on the periphery of this, but I think that it's an incredible effort, an incredible project. It's going to be complicated and it's going to be costly, but it really has the opportunity to and presents the opportunity to enhance our city. I mean, biking culture is one of the great things that we have here in New Mexico. I'm a mountain biker, and I am blown away with the quality of the trails around the state, but especially in Albuquerque. The foothills are amazing trails to ride, or if you just go over there to the East Mountains just beyond Tejedas, we've got some great trails. So I love the rail trail effort. Personally, I think it's transformational when we're able to execute on it. And so there's a rail trail map. One thing that I think not everybody thinks about when they envision what this can look like, but to me is a golden opportunity, is developing businesses all along that corridor, right? If we can have a rail trail that's not only a fun place for people to walk and bike, but also, you know, we have food halls, or we have some kind of comfortable places, cafes, places for people to dwell and spend some time. What a great opportunity, especially if you have a family. My 9-year-old daughter just learned how to ride a bike this last weekend, and as soon as the rail trail comes online, I'm going to be taking her out there. Hopefully it won't be too many more years in the future. Okay, now for the part that I really know much more about. What's happening at the Sunport? And this is just a few bullet points. I'm happy to talk about many other items. We have 5 million passengers annually. Okay, so that's more than 2.5 million out and more than 2.5 million in. We are the gateway of New Mexico, and a lot of these people are visiting Albuquerque, but a lot of them are renting a car and making a beeline for Santa Fe. You know, we'll take it all, and we're happy to serve this role of the major commercial airport in this state. But we also think that there's more and more reasons for people to stay in Albuquerque. And even if you are going up to Santa Fe, and that's your aim, there are more really fun things to do in this city, right? I mean, just look at the food halls alone. That never existed when I was growing up here, and the restaurant scene in general was not nearly as developed as it is today. And so these things are popping up all over the place. And then you've got these little hidden gems like Electric Playhouse over on the west side. You know, just really cool things that the more visitors know about them, and even the more residents that know about them, the more interest we can draw, the more those businesses can thrive. And so the airport does play a role in that, and we actually have an advertising program as well. And a lot of the local businesses do ads on our screen assets that are around the baggage claim areas, the gates, and the hold rooms. And we're actually deploying a lot more advertising screens right now, and we're going to have an RFP for advertising agency that will come out in probably about a month or two. And so for the ad agencies that are here in town, around the state and nationally, they'll have an opportunity to respond and to manage that advertising program for the Sunport. Tanya mentioned the 32 nonstop routes. I am super excited for these 2 new ones this year. Nashville, that's golden. Like, Albuquerque is a music city, and if you've been out there seeing any of the live music events, boy, we have so much, and it's really a diverse scene. And so to be connected with a nonstop route to like the music city of the country, Nashville, like what a great opportunity to really enhance that I'd call it sort of commercial or cultural diplomacy, right? And to really enhance the awareness around our country that Albuquerque does have that. And so Bands of Enchantment, right, is a good example one way that that's been highlighted. And of course, we've partnered with Bands of Enchantment. Leah knows them well, and we've had several great conversations, and actually did a Sunport ad with Bands of Enchantment when it ran on public television and also online. And I mentioned the Nashville route, but Dulles also. So Dulles has a line, a subway line that was built out to the airport several years ago. I was actually living in the DC area when this was done. So Dulles used to be kind of hard to get to the heart of DC. You had to take a really expensive taxi ride or get a taxi to the subway. Now you can just jump on the Silver Line and you can get to the heart of DC in about 45 minutes, almost an hour, depending on where you're headed. But it's way more convenient now for visiting Washington, D.C. Now I know all the politicos who traveled back and forth between Albuquerque and D.C. are really excited about this, but also to visit the nation's capital. Right? It's beautiful. And when I was living there, I loved it. I was always stunned by the really amazing gardens and flora and architecture and history. So it's a beautiful place to visit. We have very active air cargo and charter operations. Some folks don't really know and just kind of focus on the passenger service that we have. But we've got Amazon doing air service out of the airport now for about 1.5 years. They've been doing that. We have some of the major carriers that are active there, FedEx, for example, and there's a couple of feeder airlines also that do service for those carriers. And then I mentioned the RFI already. And then Double Eagle 2. So we're also engaged in investments in infrastructure at Double Eagle 2. There's not a whole lot of capacity out there, so we need to invest millions of dollars in water and electricity especially. Gas will also have some investment, but the required capacity is not quite as much. So really our emphasis right now is those two critical utilities, is water and gas. And as we develop out Double Eagle 2, we're working with hangar developers to really build more hangar capacity out there, so folks with their own nice airplanes can park them there and they can be protected inside the hangars. So Kenny Hinkes, some of you might know him, is a local developer. He and his son Jack are the minds and the energy behind high-flying hangars. We also have another local resident, Matt Workman, with his partner Jerry Monk, who are building another set of hangars that's called KAEG hangars. KAEG is the airport code for Double Eagle 2. They'll be adding new hangars as well in the next couple of years. But Kenny and Jack have already finished building their first row of hangars, and those tenants are already moved in. So they have a few more rows of hangars that they're going to be building, and the airport is making a major investment right now in design of a general aviation terminal, and that's so that we can have a better customer experience for people who use that airfield, and a 24-hour restroom and a cafe and things like that sometimes you take for granted, but the first thing a pilot wants to do after they land is use the bathroom. And if there's not a 24-hour facility, guess what happens? So I won't add more to that. But mentioned Mesa Film Studios and the terminal. We also are looking at developing a helicopter campus and a vertiport siting study. So what a vertiport is, for those of you who don't know, that's to accommodate VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing systems. The reason why this is important is this is the next frontier of air travel. It's kind of like an air taxi. And some VTOLs are powered electrically, all electric, and some are hybrid. The hybrid VTOLs have like a 750-mile range. So we could do runs between ABQ and Double Eagle 2 easily, but we could also do runs between Double Eagle 2 and ABQ and Santa Fe or Las Cruces. Air taxi would be booked just as easily as you book your Uber. You land, you fire up your app, you order it, and the VTOL can be waiting for you when you get to wherever we build that vertiport. So we're looking at that for Double Eagle 2 now. We've already started to look at it for the Sunport. And as this technology gets deployed in much bigger cities, I'm making a play to do it here in Albuquerque. And there aren't many cities our size that are making a play for it, but I'm going to fight for that too. And then in the meantime, we're also engaged in a Double Eagle 2 master plan update, and that's so that we can really chart a course for the future of Double Eagle 2, which is a general aviation airport, but it also serves an important role as a reliever airport. And that means that we push more of the general aviation traffic out to Double Eagle 2, easing congestion on our airfield and making ABQ a safer airfield to use. And I think we know from some of the incidents that we've seen in recent months just how critical it is to have a really safe airfield and airspace. And so we're committed to that. So that's my presentation. Thank you so much. Do we have time for Q&A?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions?
I know the ACE development called for a hotel to be built there. Are there still plans to move forward with the hotel at ACE?
Yeah, there was a conceptual plan several years ago that did have some retail and hotel development there at the ACE. I would say it depends on how the master developers respond to the RFI, but probably not hotels. One of the reasons is we have a security envelope around the airport, and I think probably the highest and best use for that property are the kinds of projects that will really benefit from that security envelope. One of them that we know is very likely to happen is Addison, and they do supercomputer as a service, disaster recovery, and data management for national security clients. So that's the kind of the example of one of those things that would be kind of sensitive to have near an airport. That said, there are other properties not on the ACE, especially on the west side of the airport, that could be really good for hotels. And so for that reason, we actually conducted a hotel study to look at, is there an opportunity in the Sunport submarket to build a hotel? And I've spoken to a couple hotel developers about this. One of the big concerns I heard at that time when we had this discussion about a year ago was costs to build and cost to borrow money. Both of them just being really constraining factors that were making it difficult for a new project to pencil. But we'll see. I mean, certainly there are some opportunities on Sunport properties, but also the UNM properties there on the west side as well. Thank you for that question.
On those new nonstop flights to Nashville and Dulles?
Yes.
Elsewhere?
Oh, absolutely. So Nashville is Southwest Airlines, which used to be considered a low-cost carrier. I think they've kind of held on to that, but it's not really that anymore. It's changing. Kind of just really mainstream. They have 49% of their market share out of ABQ. And then United is doing Dulles. Dulles is a United hub. One of the reasons why, just beyond getting back and forth between here and Washington, D.C., one of the reasons why that's a great destination for us to bring into our network is it also adds new opportunities for connections to Europe. So we've actually kind of done the analysis. The flight out would leave at about 3 p.m. So you'd hit that bank of evening departures going to Europe from Dulles. Yeah. And there are a few that are actually really like cost competitive and would get you from ABQ to destinations in Spain or the UK faster than some of the other options.
I actually have one. I know that Double Eagle is mostly general aviation. We also have Kirkland flying in and out of there, special ops. But are you getting pressure for maybe more commercial there with all the warehousing, Amazon, and all the food companies out there? Are you getting calls for that kind of activity?
Yeah, most of the calls we get are for aeronautical related projects, manufacturing of aviation systems, aeronautical systems, for example. I have had some inquiries from folks looking at warehousing. Also had some inquiries for folks looking at deployment of solar arrays. The thing about our property out at Double Eagle 2 is the site where Mesa Film Studios is located has been cleared of old ordnance. But there's actually unexploded ordnance history all along that west side. So they're called formerly used defense sites. And in the World War II era, the Army Air Force launched test munitions all across the mesa. And so we have to do some clearing of some of our properties out there. The site where Mesa Film Studios has already been cleared. And so we're kind of, one of the processes that we're engaging in with the Double Eagle 2 Master Plan Update is to put into place a plan to clear some of the unexploded ordnance or shrapnel that might be out there on some of the properties. So that's an added expense, an added process for time. And so, there are some entities that are interested in still developing out there and maybe helping the city pay for the clearing of all of that. But that can be a hindrance. That said, the ground rates, the ground lease rates are quite low at Double Eagle 2. We go based on fair market value, but we start at 18 cents per square foot per year. So it's pretty
will add
affordable.
to that, as far as commercial, it's hard to accommodate anything really larger than, I don't know the size of the
Yeah,
place.
you have
but-
a limited footprint out there.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
our runway can't take the weight.
Ah,
Yeah.
nice.
So turning Double Eagle 2, this has been kind of discussed before, whether we turn Double Eagle 2 into a cargo hub. To turn it into a cargo hub, we would need to build a runway that can accommodate such traffic at a price tag of about $200 to $300 million. Yeah. So we get FAA support for those kinds of projects, but they won't give us support for that kind of development in Double Eagle 2 until we hit certain thresholds of utilization at the Sunport. Just one more thing I want to mention, though, to your question on Double Eagle 2. Mesa Film Studios and whatever else we can do out there in terms of commercial development in the non-aeronautical realm is so critical, because right now the aviation department, which is an enterprise fund, but the aviation department pays about $1.2 million every year to subsidize the operations of Double Eagle 2. It's not self-sustaining. So it's our mission to make it self-sustaining, but we want to do so in a way that's responsible and be responsible stewards of the land. We respect the fact that the petroglyphs are nearby and the major public open space. And that's why we think Mesa Film Studios is a great project, because its carbon footprint is very low. It's only 100 acres out of this, 4,000 acres of property out there. So.
Thank you, Manny. Wow.
Thanks so much.